Good evening. My name is Misha Stone. I'm a Reader Services Librarian here at the Central Library. That's so nice. But really, what I find to be my favorite time of the year is when Clarion West has their reading series. So thank you so much for coming out tonight on a beautiful evening to share this with us. Just a few orders of library business before I turn this over to Clarion West and Daniel Jose Older. This event is supported by the Seattle Public Library Foundation, Author Series sponsor Gary Kunis, and media sponsor the Seattle Times, and presented in partnership with the University Bookstore. Buy books, support independent booksellers. And I should also mention that Gabriel will be selling CDs tonight, so when you're buying books, you can buy music too. Support your local artists. This program is being recorded for Library Podcast. You can subscribe to our free podcast at the library's website, www.spl.org. Turn off your cell phone, nice reminder. I should also mention, just as a detail, that the bathrooms do close 10 minutes before the library closes at 7:50. They reopen at 8:05. If that hasn't happened, please let staff or security know, because we want to make sure that that happens. I also want to mention that we love it when you promote our events. We have a hashtag tonight, SPL Older. I also have the Twitter handles of the bookstore, Clarion West, Gabriel Teodros, Daniel Jose Older. So show some love tonight. And we also passed out some surveys. We'd love to hear from you, so please hand those back to us. You can just drop them on the table or hand them to us. And I just want to say I'm so happy to have Daniel Jose Older here. Is a voice that I appreciate so much, both in his writing and online. I appreciate his advocacy for diversity in children's literature and fantasy and science fiction. And if you're not already following him on Twitter, it's worth getting an account, I'm just going to say. And now I'm turning it over to Todd McCoy from Clarion West to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Clarion West 2017 reading series. My name is Todd McCoy. I'm one of the board members of Clarion West. Thank you, Gabriel, GabrielTeodros.com. You can find it there. KEXP Friday mornings or Saturday mornings? Friday night, Saturday morning. Okay, so awesome. And he does it merch. We'll have it after the show. We've got books over here. Thank you all for coming tonight. How many people are here for the first time for a Clarion West reading for the first time? Just out of curiosity. Really? That's amazing. Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. We have a sign-up sheet going around. Feel free to sign up. See on our mailing list, we can let you know about what's going on, different events and things that we have. In addition to our 6-week workshop in the summertime, we have one-day workshops in the fall and in the spring. And probably next year, early next year, we're going to start doing online workshops, mostly master classes and things like that. So things to keep an eye out for. This is the 34th year of the annual Clarion West Writers Workshop. 34 years, which means that next year the workshop will be old enough to run for president. Our mission is to provide a world-class educational opportunity to emerging writers of speculative fiction, like the 18 students we have from all over the world. How many of them are here tonight? Hold hands. All right. They're into their 5th week. Stamina. Collapsed yet, I guess. Showcasing the works of amazing instructors like Daniel Jose Older is a big part of that opportunity. Thank you to the University Bookstore and the Seattle Public Library for partnering with us for these events. The readings will continue through next Tuesday at the University Bookstore. And keep that in mind if you're going to go. It's not here, it's at the University Bookstore next week, and our we're going to be hosting the esteemed cyberpunk writer Pat Cadigan. She's an amazing writer. You just do not want to miss her because she doesn't come around very often at all. I can't wait for that. This series would not be possible without the generous support of the National Endowment for the Arts, Amazon.com, Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, King County for Culture, the University Bookstore, Seattle Public Library, and many individual donors just like you. We do run off donations, so please consider a donation of any amount. We're a 501c3 and eligible for matching donations from your employers. Keep that in mind. Also, Clarion West Write-A-thon is officially underway. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. How many people are doing the Write-A-thon? Right. So what happens at the Write-A-thon is one of our big fundraisers of the year. Writers from all over the world will sign up and set their own writing goals. So it's not like you don't donate per word or anything like that. You just throw money at them and say, write, just keep writing, just do it, do your work. They recruit sponsors from all over the world, show the support by making a donation to Clarion West. The sponsorship is really important, not just to Clarion West, but to the individual writers. And you'd be surprised at what just any donation to a writer would do. You throw $5 at them, you can throw $100 at them, and let them know that you're thinking of them and want them to continue writing. Mine is a, I will describe it as Game of Thrones meets Scoop. In space. Yeah. You know what just came to me? So we have more than 200 writers participating in the Redathon. That's a big number. I encourage all of you to consider sponsoring one or more of those writers. You go to clarionwest.org to browse writers' profiles, read excerpts from their work, learn about their goals, and sponsor the writer or writers who you want to encourage. And we have something special as part of the Write-A-thon. How many people would pay money to have Ian McDonald murder you? Yeah? Yeah? Anybody know what a Tuckerization is? Yeah? No? Tuckerization is what happens when a writer, the writer will put you in their story. It's basically what it works out to be. Ian McDonald, who's an amazing writer, he has some Tuckerizations available. He would kill you off in spectacular fashion. Our own Neil Graham last year was lovingly massacred. Luna in Wolfman, yeah. Pretty amazing. So that's available. You want it. And we have two other writers who are going to do something, well, maybe not quite the same thing. David Levine and Kathleen Alcala. Kathleen's in the audience here. And they're both doing the same thing, although I'm guessing they'll be a lot nicer than you. Did you kill somebody else?
I'm offering a polite death.
Offering a what?
A polite death.
A polite death. If you're interested in any of these, go to clarionwest.org and check out the Write-A-thon page. We should have a page, a link up to it tonight. If you can't find it, there's a search button in the upper left corner. Just put in Tucker or Tuckerizations and you can find it. Yeah, if you want one, you'll have to know how to spell it. Seriously, you got to check them out because they're going to go pretty fast. Thank you again for your support. And I'm going to turn this over to our workshop director, Neil Graham. Thank you.
Writer, editor, composer Daniel Hazley Older is the best-selling author of the young adult series The Shadow Shaper Cipher, the Bone Street Rumba Urban Fantasy series, and the upcoming middle-grade sci-fi adventure Flood City. He won the International Latino Book Award and has been nominated for the Kirkus Award, the Mythopoeic Award, the Locus Award, the Andre Norton Award, and the World Fantasy Award. Shadow Shaper was named one of Esquire's 80 books every person should read. He's an activist, both in his geographic community, Brooklyn, and in the literary community. His stories, essays, and tweets are viscerally and articulately helping change the literary landscape, breaking down walls, and demonstrating that YA and urban fantasy can have powerful and vulnerable, meaning realistic,
characters of color, and still hit bestseller lists, get stellar reviews, and appeal to readers already in the genre and new to it, and especially to those who have always longed to see themselves represented in the genre. An interviewer introduced him in Rumpus, saying, "His stories reflect the detail and rhythms of real life, whether his own or the lives of others, in small details and broad strokes, which is precisely why his writing is so strong and relevant for readers." When talking in another interview about the problems involved for writers attempting to expand the diversity of their characters, Daniel said, "We talk about physical features a lot with representation and simplify it that way." Then he goes on to say, "But really, we're talking about something as deep as spirit and rhythm and soul and narrative power." To me, that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about his writing. It expresses and shares with its readers that which is as deep as spirit, and it carries its rhythms and its soul and its narrative power. Please help me welcome, in his first appearance ever in Seattle, Daniel Jose Older.
That was beautiful. Give it up one more time. Thank you. That was the best introduction I think I've ever had. I'm not making that up. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Clarion, the board, Nisi, always. Thank you, Neil and Hugh. Students, what's up, Clarion students? You all right? Yes, great that you're here. Thank you, Twitter motherfuckers, for being here. I appreciate that. Yes, I see y'all. Thank you, Mona. Oh, okay, yes. Clarion West is an amazing institution, and I am just so honored to be part of it. I was telling Ty, I remember getting the email asking me to teach, and I just literally was like, oh my God, you want me to teach that? I applied and got in 2010. In fact, I just found the email that I sent you, Nisi, where I said, I had to decline because of actually initiated into the priesthood of Santeria, so that was dope. But it also meant I couldn't come here. I mean, it was worth it, not for nothing. But, you know, I'm glad to finally have made it here. It's very exciting. It's a really huge honor. And I'm glad to finally be in Seattle. I've been wanting to come to this motherfucking city for a minute, so it's great to be here. Thank you. And thank you for coming out and supporting. Thank you for sharing this moment with me, because we are living in a very momentous time. And, you know, storytelling is a sacred art. And so it's important that we gather in difficult times and share in the sacred art of storytelling. Because that's how we survive. That's how we've always survived and made it through. And that's how we're going to keep surviving. You know, whatever they try to take from us, they cannot take our stories. And they cannot take our ability to tell our stories. And so that's what we're going to keep doing. And thank you, Gabriel. That was a beautiful set. Please give it up for him. I actually followed him back in the MySpace days. He has a MySpace page. Sorry to put you out there like that, but I too have a MySpace page somewhere. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna read. So I'm gonna read to y'all from Battle Hill Bolero, which is the third in the Mount Street Rumba series. It's for sale over there. They also have Salsa Nocturna, by the way, in hard copy, which is really cool. So pick that shit up. So if you haven't read the books, you're fucked, because I'm about to spoil literally the whole series. I'm sorry. It's your own problem, really. You should read it out. And since it's been out since 2015, you gotta get with it. So I have no sympathy for you. But just to catch you up real quick and spoil books 1 and 2, literally, and 3, 2.5. Carlos de la Cruz is a half-dead, half-alive hitman, basically, and he's been doing the dirty work of the Council of the Dead, which is basically the bureaucracy of the afterlife, as far as he can remember, which is whenever he got resurrected a couple years ago, or half resurrected. He's able to walk that uneven line between the living and the dead. He can see and deal with ghosts and spirits, and he can see and deal with the living. So the Council of the Dead uses that and just sends him out to do whatever dirty work they have. But those are some corrupt, bureaucratic motherfuckers, and he's tired of their shit. In fact, everybody in the ghost world is really tired of their shit. So by the time we get to book 3, everybody's fed up and they're just about to, well, we're reaching boiling point, I'll put it like that. Meanwhile, Carlos has a lot of personal problems going on because he met the one other half-dead person that he's ever heard of, and of course, killed him right away. Technically, he was under orders, but he still killed the guy. And then it turned out that the guy had a really hot sister. This is all like chapter 2 of book 1. And so he asked her out, and he didn't mention the fact that he killed her brother. You gotta really like put that stuff, you gotta lead with that, you know what I mean? He didn't. So then she found out, she stabbed him, which is the correct procedure when you find out. But they already had sex at that point, spoiler. Twice, and it was good sex. It was like really good sex. So, anyway, that's all book 1. And then she like walks away, it turns out she's pregnant. I know, it just gets worse. And then, so she walks away, she's like, yo, bro, yeah, this isn't gonna work out, I'm gonna hate you, I'm gonna stab you again. So he does save her life, but she also is like that. So she walks away. In book 2, they're not talking, but then it turns out she's got twins, which means he's got twins. What the fuck, right? So, and I should just do the whole series for you, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so it's just a hot mess. And then it turns out that not only did all this happen, but they start resurfacing some of their memories, because they don't have any memories from the actual life. And it turns out, Sasha, the woman, she actually killed Carlos in the real life. So, because they find out by tapping into their own memories through hypnosis, and she gives him that memory, and she's like, look, this is my last memory, it's of me killing you. And he's like, this motherfucker! Literally. And so at the end of book 2, he just walks away, because he's like, I can't be with the woman who killed me. I feel like that's a valid concern. But he's still trash for walking out on, his baby mama and then 2 kids, basically. So during Salsa Nocturna, he's kind of just out in the world trying to pretend he doesn't have, a woman he's in love with and 2 babies. And Battle of Boleto, he's trying to reconcile all these things where we chime in. So I hope that was a good summary. I enjoyed it. Thank you. I really had a good time. By the way, I hope we have time for a Q&A at the end of all this. We'll see, but that would be fun because I like to hear myself talk, as my Clarion West students will tell you. All right, so here we are. I think that's all you need to know. Carlos de la Cruz. Should I cut him? Harrison Range's voice shivers. I feel that I should probably cut him, right? I'm not sure though, to be honest. I really hate new guys. Harrison is clinging to a support beam of the Manhattan Bridge. He's a ghost, and ghosts don't really fall unless you push them, so there is no need to be clinging. But that's not what's put the tremor in his voice, at least not the only thing. A river giant stands astride the Manhattan-bound lane of traffic, sobbing. The answer to Harrison's question is an unequivocal and enthusiastic yes, according to council protocols. But it's Saturday, and I haven't had any coffee yet, and I'm not in the mood for even the pretense of following these inane bylaws. Anyway, I think I know this river giant. Got into a tiff with a group of them not too long ago on the west side. They were trying to resurrect an ancient serial killer guy. We murked the whole squad except one who disappeared back into the dirty waters of the Hudson. I think this is that one, even though my friend Chris warned him not to come back with the business end of a ghost bazooka. Then again, all river giants look alike to me, so what do I know? Do whatever you want, Harrison. Harrison whimpers. The giant sniffles and sobs. Traffic is snarled, mostly because our lumbering, distraught friend caused a fender bender. No one can see him, at least not most folks, but his very presence sends discord rippling through the congested air above the East River. It's the 3rd mashup this week, and the council finally caught wind, and well, here we are. I'm just not sure I should cut him, Harrison reports. Surely, one of these passing cars has a spare cup of coffee in it. The thing is, according to Council Bylaw 89.2, the river giant is a casual disturbance entity, and I should thereby cut him and send him to the deeper death, thereby ending his existence entirely and for good. I peered through the crisscrossing tension wires into the window of a black SUV. That guy has 2 coffee cups in his drink holder and no one in the passenger seat. Dickhole. I lost my plate. That's what I get for being Dickhole, yeah. However, there are two complications. The river giant has not technically made himself visible to the general public, and he hasn't caused any mass loss of life or property damage in excess of $40,000. Not by my guess, anyway. Wouldn't you say, Carlos? Not unless that Winnebago that got trashed out the exit ramp was full of cocaine. My arm doesn't quite reach, so I slide my cane through the steel crossbeams. Ha! No, you probably would have heard about that if it was. What's the other thing? What other thing? Success! The tip of my cane clacks against the side of the SUV. The window slides down with a whir. What the fuck? The driver yells. He's burly, and he's wearing those Terminator sunglasses that grandmas realized weren't cool in 1994. I will just take the L. You said there were two things, Harrison. I walk a few steps out of range while the driver continues his curse out. What is the second one? River giants are almost extinct. How can a dead thing be? Therefore, as per Sub-Guidelines 91A, they are technically protected entities. It really didn't seem like that a few months ago when we were trying not to get stomped by them on the banks of the Hudson. Well, damn, I didn't realize that. So what you gonna do, man? I'm cold and I gotta be somewhere at 2. Above us, the river giant lets out a warbling cry, something like 1,000 dying goats simulcast through a screechy megaphone. I scowl. I'd forgotten about that shit. Harrison squints, steeling himself. I'm gonna cut him, he announces. As it turns out, I have my own little set of protocols, and one of them is, don't announce you're going to cut a gigantic river demon right before you do it. It's too late for all that, though. The warbling peaks in intensity and then cuts suddenly short. The giant looks at Harrison. Harrison says, oh shit, and then the giant backhands him off the bridge. Fuck. Then the river giant looks at me. Double fuck. You! There aren't enough fucks in the world. I turn around and run. I shove through a gaggle of tourists, German, I think. I grunt an apology without stopping. None of them mind too much. Apparently assholes are just part of the local flavor. One even snaps a picture. But then the river giant is on them, which must feel like some huge invisible tornado just dropped out the sky. They collapse, screaming. The river giant doesn't apologize. He just roars towards me with those humongous strides, crashing along the walkway like a deranged oak tree. I turn back to look where I'm going just in time to see the cyclist that I'm crashing into. For a few seconds, everything is a tangle of gears and sudden aches and the bikers cursing. Then, I'm right side up again and still running, my odd lopsided gait even more slanted. You can't goddamn just do that, man, the guy yells. I mean. And then he too is swept aside with a yelp. The whole fence shivers, the cyclist grunts and collapses, and me, I run. I'm only halfway across the bridge when I start running out of breath. Blame the Malagueña cigars that I do love so much. But I still hear the thing clamoring along behind me, even if a little less enthusiastically now. I steal a glimpse, and then stop entirely, leaning my hand against one of the huge concrete support pillars to catch my breath. The giant's wild flush forward has slowed to a pathetic, uneven clamor. He keeps stopping to wipe his eyes like he has something in them, and then hop, giant ghost loogies into the river below. The bumps and bruises carnage we cause is far enough back not to trouble us, and besides, the gridlock traffic and passing seagulls, we are alone on the bridge. The giant stops a few feet away from me and just breaks down sobbing. One hand clutches the tension wires above him, the other massages the center of his wide face right between those beady eyes. Hey, I say, my cane unsheaths to reveal a blade, and it's a blade that deals the deeper death to spirits like this with a quickness. Plus, my breath is back, mostly. I take a step toward the river giant. Are you all right? He snorkels and sniffles, wipes the two slits where his nose should be, and looks up at me. For a second, I think I'm going to have to make a break for it again. Then he says, "Ookus," and goes back to sobbing. Man, I've had days like that. More than a few, in fact, especially since I murdered the brother of the woman I love before I'd even met her, and then fathered her children. And then found out she murdered me. I just usually stay in my apartment instead of terrorizing major throughways, though. I don't know what ookus means, but I know what I do when I'm sad. Ookus, I say, retrieving 2 malagueñas from inside my pocket. Ookus. He looks up again, wipes his eyes. Then the river giant reaches those long long fingers out and daintily accepts the gift. I'm wondering if I'll have to explain what to do with it, but he just puts it right into that big old mouth and leans forward, putting his face all up in mine for a light. And then, she showed me her memory, I say, 2 hours and 6 minutes later. The one memory she had of her life before she died. And it was me, Lucas. It was me. My final moment. She killed me, man. Small gated in enclosures line the upper level of the Manhattan Bridge. Empty 40s, crumpled paper bags, and cigarette butts cover the ground, and graffiti commemorates the many exploits each alcove has witnessed. But the view is unparalleled. The shimmering towers of Manhattan's financial district stare down Brooklyn's newly converted warehouse apartments as the East River swirls between the scattered islands of the open bay. Lucas looks down at me, aghast. We've cleared the trash out of the way and sit facing each other, backs to the colorfully cursed upon stone walls of the enclosure. At some point during the conversation, God, or the Eureka's, or New Eurekan Jesus, sent one of those food cart guys past on his way to catch the late lunch crowd, and I snagged 2 coffees for us. Lucas bada shock, Lucas says glumly. Right? I don't know what that means, but it really seems genuine. He's probably been in a similar situation and feels my pain. Thanks, man. I shake my head, sip the now cold food cart coffee. I was pretty mad. I am. I mean, I walked away, never looked back. Sorta. I sorta never looked back. Is that a thing? Look, I pull a scrap of folded lined paper from my pocket and pass it to Lucas. Then I relight my cigar while he reads. Ooh, vacina post para la polisi, Lucas says. Exactly. I just feel like they should know something about their father's life, half-life, whatever. So I pass him along with the old cubano about the babysitter. You know, letters about my everyday life. But I know what we did before we died, us halfies, I mean, we can't be held responsible for it. Not really. I have no idea what I did or who I was before that night. I could have been a hellish human being. What matters is what we do now. And in the now, I'm the one that was in the wrong more than Sasha. And I mean, when it comes to those letters, they're nice, I guess, but really and truly, I ain't shit for it. I know I gotta suck it up and face them, her, soon. Lucas peers over the lined paper at me, nods. Lucas. I know, man, I know. I'm gonna. He passes the paper back. But I keep seeing that night, the night I killed her brother, and I really think she forgives me, to be honest. I just don't think I do. And you know what's really fucked up about it? Lucas. Behind everything that went wrong in my life, starting with that single night, lurks the motherfucking Council of the Dead. Lucas's brow furrows. The council sent me to kill Trevor. I relighted my Lagania and passed Lucas the lighter. And when I did, the council sent me to kill Sasha, which I didn't, of course. The council backed Caitlin Fern, whose fucked up cockroach coat almost turned my babies into demon insect hives. My babies, Lucas! And when my best friend Riley had finally had enough, the council wanted me to kill him too, and his ass already dead. Lucas shakes his head. Hell, the council sent me to kill you. You know that? You know what, Lucas? Fuck the council. Fuck him in the face. Lucas nods. From par concili. Exactly. Lavini. Anyway, that's my story. What's got you so upset? Thank you. You guys are a great audience, you know that. I'm going to jump ahead to another part of the book. This is going to be from Chris's point of view. Chris is a teenage ghost. She's a punk rock black chick. She's awesome. She's the one that carries the bazooka around, fucking up ghosts. She's been mad at the council for a minute. She kind of entered the council as like knowing that she was going to be a double agent and just go in and cause lots of chaos, much like myself in the publishing industry. And so once the revolution kind of kicked off, which it does pretty soon after that scene, she was just like, let's do this. So now we're in the middle of it. It hasn't gone into full-fledged battle yet, but folks are getting got on both sides, and it's a hot mess. So they just came from a battle, and one of the resistance's kind of important landmarks was just taken out by the council. So everybody's fucked up about it, but especially Chris. And that is where we find her. He dipped out a half hour ago. Left this place a chilly gray splatter of steel and concrete and the living and dead. And then darkness ate the sky, the street lamps blinked on and the temperature dropped. Car headlights and the dull glow of bodega signs and the flicker of lighters and cell phone screens illuminated faces, reflecting off windows along the river and still. All those billions of megawatts surging through millions of bulbs, tiny and huge, and they only barely hold back the night. The empty industrial back alleys of Williamsburg, rat-infested rock piles by the river, frozen puddles and frost-covered trash bags, waiting on the curb like fat old men who have given up. Every now and then, a bar. Inside, strangers seek warmth from the weather and half-reckless intimacies and missed connections, and drink. A gaggle of hipsters huddled close to each other, smoke and steam rising from cigarettes and lips, shadows thrown long and wavy into the deserted street. They don't see me. No one sees me. South along the river, Manhattan begs my attention. I keep eyes ahead. Projects loom, Hasidics bustle back and forth. In the distance, a synagogue. Beyond that, another glass tower cuts the cityscape. The Brooklyn-Queens Expressway stretches like a corroded metal snake through the heart of the borough. Here it slides below ground, then arches up between brick towers and loops around over the water and shoots off towards Staten Island. If you follow it around that bend and past Red Hook, you can see the dusty warehouse where the council of the dead make their home. I could show up. I could kill. Be destroyed in a blaze of glory. It's tempting. I would be talked about for ages, my memory a banner beneath which the revolution would swell. But we already have our martyr. My face tightens. I cut sharply south and blaze through the streets. The gourmet pizza spots and wine bars and hood Chinese spots and nail salons become a blur. The hipsters and homeboys and homeless blend into each other as I whir past. They don't see me. No one sees me. I myself blur into a shining spectral whoosh as I cascade through the Bed-Stuy streets. I pause on Atlantic. Let the bustling night traffic blast through me. Even now, a couple years into being ethereal and barely there, watching those headlights lurch toward me sends a shock dancing out from my core. I still wait for the screechy brakes, the shrill horn, the cursing driver. Instead, the car doesn't even slow, just blasts through with a prickly iciness, and I close my eyes, stabilize, and take in each flashing millisecond of rushing steel and cushion and flesh and bone, and then it's past, and another comes, and along with it, memories, regrets, fear. I zip up Bedford, giving the monstrous old fortress men's shelter a wide berth. I swing right toward Franklin, slow as I approach where the house once was. Try to pull loose from the mire of memories, fail. I round the corner onto Franklin. The night has become crisp. The air whispers of snow. A bodega on the corner, brownstones line the block, and there, except no. I pause across the street where I expected a pile of rubble hidden by a construction fence. There is a cheerful neon sign on a brand new brick storefront. Juniper's Pet Grooming and Organic Cupcakery. Juniper? Pets? Cupcakes? How can one even put those two? You know what? It doesn't matter. Confusion flattens and disperses beneath the sudden onslaught of rage. It covers me, burns and glistens inside me. I cross the street oblivious to the passing cars, the passers-by. Smiley faces gloat around the words on a sign saying there'll be a grand opening next week, complete with DJ and a pet costume/cupcake contest. Through the window I can see the darkened front room, with cartoony arrows pointing to the grooming area and the bakery. Some cans of paint and rollers lie around on the floor, but otherwise the place is pretty much done. Some entrepreneur's lifelong dream, perhaps, or maybe not. You never know what people with extravagant resources will do on a whim. The rage, somewhat subsided as I took the place in, reignites. I enter. Feel the window pane's density prickle through me as I reach. Then the stillness surrounds me. This was once the empty front room, just 2 weeks ago. How does the world move so fast? I would step in and take a deep breath, like I just crossed a border to get back home. Here I was safe. Now, the sob that comes out doesn't sound like me. It's high-pitched and it catches me off guard. I only know it's mine because I feel my whole body heave when another one comes out. This was my safe place. This was my safe place, and now we are at war. We are at war, and I've already killed my own teacher. And ahead there is only more killing, and this, my safe place, is no more. The third and fourth and fifth sob come in gulpy hiccups, and there's a precipice. That moment when the deluge will either burst forth or fall back. I'll wipe my eyes and walk away, or I will fall apart. The strength of this rage and sadness is such that I don't know what will happen if I let go. I feel I may never come back. I hang there for a good few moments, barely breathing, just a fat, flickering shroud in an empty room on a winter night. Tiny flickers erupt within me, flashes of bright amidst my vast darkness. My safe space gone, I am untethered. Here is where I would have come to cool this hatred. More flickers, I don't know what they are, what they mean. They register as momentary, condensed unravelings, like slivers of my DNA are coming undone, each sending out little blasts of light as it trembles and then dissolves. A pause, and then more flickers, many more, bombs exploding across a darkened city, flares in the night sky. Then they catch and spread, unchecked, a million now, blistering and burning across all of who I am. Each minuscule spirit cell explodes to life and light. Finally, I look up from the crouch I've been trembling in. The night has caught fire around me. No, I am on fire. The flames spit and lash from my shining, translucent arms, my belly, my heart. The rage issues forth in bright yellows and purples. It is real. Not just a spectral illusion. The quiet lobby glows now with all this rabid heat. I am aflame. The first thing to catch is one of the drapes that they've laid out for painting. Flames tiptoe along the edge, find some flammable bit of chemical along its surface, and then scream to life. Soon, one of the walls has caught, and me, I keep burning. But there's no pain. The fire is me. It can no more burn me than burn itself. We are together, one. I wonder briefly if I'll ever be able to put it out, if it'll matter, because maybe I'll be gone soon anyway. And then it doesn't matter, but not because I'm gone, because it's simply what I am. There are no more questions inside me as I tip to one side just so, lighting the reception desk with its cartoon puppy dog, explaining in bubbly letters how to follow them on social media. The desk explodes into a million shards of wood and glass, shattering the front window. From the wreckage, I gather someone had stored a 12-pack of PBRs and some bottles of Captain Morgan in one of the cabinets, probably for the grand opening. From not too far away, sirens. Then more. They're coming from all sides now, and an irrational panic wells up within me. Cops, firemen, they will find me, destroy me somehow. But no. It's not just that I'm invisible, I am fire. There is no finding me, there is no catching me. These flames keep up their steady dance along my shoulders and my back, the crown of my head. As the engines screech up, I walk forward as slow as I feel to, arms outstretched, out of the flaming wreckage and into the street. Their eyes sway past me. There's too much going on to bother with glints of flame, sparkling in the air in front of a massive 4-alarm fire. But first, pressure blast from the hoses rises into the night sky as I turn my back on all that carnage and stroll slowly down Franklin Avenue. Thank you. How much time we have left?
Quick question.
Ah.
We always like to go a little after 8 because we close at 8, so we want to not run into all the people.
Oh, fine. Oh, yeah.
So if you can answer questions at all?
Yeah, no. Okay, that's cool. All right, I'll read a little more, then I'll do some questions. Okay? All right. So I'm gonna continue from where that scene left off. You're gonna meet a couple characters. The Yawo is a teenager named Kia in the other books. She's in the process of initiation. All these characters are basically teenagers. Red is a trans man, a ghost from back in the Civil War era in New York. He used to go liberate enslaved people off slave ships in the harbor, and he came back around, and they're all part of the resistance, basically, the top of the Council of the Dead, and they all kind of accrue together along with Chris, who again is the narrator that we just were with. So yeah. The tiny lights are still glinting across my body when Jimmy, the Yawo, and Red find me around the corner from the wreckage. I look up from the ball I'm curled in, and there they are, two full flesh and blood humans, one shining in her white puffy jacket against the night, and a ghost. They've become friends over the past weeks, we all have. The coming war gave us common cause, Baba Eddie's a place to meet. And then grieving cemented the bond. I still want to slide all the way up on the Yawo when I see her, and every time Red flashes that huge grin, I want to take all of him in my mouth. But somehow I managed to put all that to the side and just be cool with him anyway. The Yawo was the first to speak. Did you... She nods to where the pulsing emergency lights beat against the sky. I nod. You still got some on you, Red says. He smiles hugely. Like, right there. He points at a random spot on himself. No, wait, not there. Actually, over there, Jimmy says, pointing at his knee. I roll my eyes. Y'all found me for the purpose of annoying me, or what? But how did you even do it, though, the Yawo asks. I mean, what happened? I'm not sure. Are you okay? She looks more concerned than I've ever seen her. That big old forehead of hers, the only thing big on her, creased with worry. I don't know, I say. No. Neither are we, Red says. That's why we found you. We figured you'd be as fucked up as we are. Solid basis for a friendship, Jimmy muses. It'll do, I say. Red spits a gooey, translucent loogie into the ether. Hey, fuck a cupcakery, though. The fuck is that? And how I look eating baked goods out of spot where they clean a dog's anus. Gonna get some literally ass-flavored ass cupcakes as well. Jimmy is laughing uncontrollably. You sure got 21st century Brooklynized real quick for someone who just walked out of the slavery era a couple months ago. Red shrugs. You know, I've been hanging out with the Black Hoodies since I showed up. I guess you could say they initiated me into the ways of today. Let's get out of here, the Yawo says. Council probably gonna have some goons out soon just to see what's up, and anyway, I'm not even supposed to be out at night. Uno, the Yawo yells, then she giggles. She never giggles. Again, I imagine an imaginary phallus rising through my translucent pants. As it is, I'm soaked. Bitch, Red says without looking up from his cards. You always on Uno. How is this? Jimmy, you'll go, man. Jimmy out, I say. What? He had like 80 cards? I said, oh. He finally looks up and sees Jimmy leaning against the Yawo's bed with his head slumped over, a little gob of drool dangling from his open mouth. Well, damn, then it's my go. He drops a draw 4. What's good now, son? Fuck. I add 4 more cards to my already mountainous hand. This is some bullshit. Whoa, Red says. You know, you're still kind of lit up. And it flared again just now when you cursed. I shrug. I don't know what's going on with me. Don't know what these flames mean. Truth is, though, I like them. It's like a moving fire tattoo. Reminded me that I brought hell to the establishment that tried to replace the only place that I felt safe. I hope it never goes away. The Yawo taps, which brings it back to Red, who drops a draw 2. Shit, I said, laughing now, and sure enough, the tiny flames dance to life along my arms and down my chest. She gapes at me. That's amazing. Does it hurt? Not exactly. It prickles, I guess, but I like it. Me too. It's pretty badass, Red agrees. Let me feel, the Yawo says. Red and I lock eyes. We've talked about the Yawo before, chewed over and over whether it's the forbidden thing, or the curve of her spine, or the full picture of her fineness. Many hot parts, Red said, and an even hotter hole. Or how she doesn't take any shit whatsoever from anyone. We never came up with one answer, but it was fun trying, and a relief to be able to talk about it with someone who agreed, but magically doesn't feel like competition. Maybe it's because I want to grind up on Red too. And yeah, at first I got glimpses of jealousy when I see them talk together, but pretty quickly those got swallowed up by how much fun we all have. She was wearing bright white gym shorts and a wife beater, which reveals a generous portion of side boob. Very slowly, I place my shimmery hand on her knee. She watches, then meets my eyes. I feel naked even amidst my wildfires. It is terrifying. It is thrilling. Normally now, the terror would win. I would try to shrivel up inside of myself, somehow become small, vanish maybe. All this bulk, all these layers of me, I would wish them gone. Even ghostly, my flesh is mountainous, I am girth. But instead, the terror and excitement combined into something brand new, a wild cocktail I have no name for. These fires have birthed bravery in me. Now swear or something, Diablo says with a mischievous grin. That grin. I don't have to swear. The lights sparkle on their own, a direct response to the gap in her teeth, the side move, the warmth of my translucence on her brown knee, the possibility of closing the gap between us, sliding along her skin and letting these lights light her up too. And then, as Red watches with wide eyes and an open mouth, and a million explosions erupt across me, I do. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate y'all being here. I feel your engagement, which isn't always true. So thank you. Let me take some questions. Don't be shy. Yes, sir.
The obvious one. Have you done these audiobooks?
I have.
All right.
Yes. In my voice. Yes. Thank you for asking. Yes, because I always forget to shout that out. Yes, I do the audiobooks for the whole Mochi Rumba series and Salsa Nocturna, which Salsa Nocturna, by the way, comes in between, comes right before this book. So it goes Half Resurrection Blues, Midnight Taxi Tango, Salsa Nocturna, which is published independently, so it gets a little confusing. And that's a collection of short stories. And then Battle en Bolero, which is this book which closes out the whole series. And I do all the audiobooks. You can find them on Audible. Yes, great question. Other questions? Oh, motherfuckers have some questions. All right. Yes, sir. Yes.
I can always bring in So, the obvious strength of things that's read are narration. So, could you give us some ideas, some notion of the process in developing both of those?
You said narration and plot?
Yes. Narration of character.
Okay.
They're all small.
I appreciate that.
So, but, if I'm going to take notes, it's not as good as you, right? And you can do it.
That's a great question, and I think process is like an under-discussed but super important element of writing. I mean, I guess writers do talk about it a lot, but process is like every writer, there are really as many different processes as there are writers in the world, and the biggest mistake I think we make as writers is presuming that someone else's process is our process. It's devastating to your whole flow if you try to write in someone else's way. And you try to sort of, it's like shoving, something into a box that doesn't fit. So my main advice about process is to be self-reflective. Know what it is. I've built that into my process in the sense of I pretty much just will jot down notes about how I'm feeling as the first thing I do when I write every day. I'll just sit down and open up a Word doc and just talk some trash about life in general, what I'm feeling with the piece, some notes about the story, whatever might come to me, and that way I'm automatically just charting how things are going. So I can look back on it and be like, well, that day sucked. Maybe it's because I tried to write before I drank coffee. And maybe whatever, so you can get a sense of that, and then you can, and the hardest part about the process is it's fluid. It's not a set thing. It does change over the course of your journey. So it really requires you to be clear about to be able to look at yourself. But I think that's also good practice, because writing, to answer your next question, writing at all, and especially writing characters who aren't you, really does require that you be introspective on some level. You can't fake the funk, and you can't half-step talking about people who aren't you, especially if you haven't done the work to figure out who you are. Especially right now, where diversity is in danger of being something that's cool instead of something that's true in publishing. The conversation about writing the other is a really clutch one that's happening, all over the place, as it should be. But I always challenge people who ask me about writing the other to also, and first and foremost, think about writing the self, because I think that's where we fail first. As people with privilege on any level, it's very easy not to look at ourselves, and it's very easy to, instead of looking at ourselves, look at someone else and try to fix their problems when we're causing their problems. So I think it's really important that we examine that and get into it. And then finally, I would just say, voice really matters, and that's when a character is true, is when their voice starts to click and do its own thing. And then it's a question of how to structure a story around them. And the one thing I'll tell you about story that I know to be the truest is that, and we were talking about this in class today, is that every story requires a crisis. And we've come to think of crisis as a bad thing always, and most stories it is, and that's because that's more interesting. But the truth is, crisis at its heart is just a turning point. It's just a turning point. That's what its root is in Greek. It was a medical term, and it just meant when a disease process changes course, for better or for worse. And that's what every story needs. There needs to be a turning point that gets us somewhere different. Like we say at Passover, why is this night different from all other nights, right? And that's what makes it a story, not just an anecdote that some dude told you at a party, but really that it matters. And so that's what I look for when I'm thinking through a story. Once that character voice clicks, what's the turning point here? What matters? In every single scene. And then in the larger, how do they form together to tell this larger story of this great big turning point, of our time or in the life of somebody, whether it's this minute, moment, asking somebody out for the first time, or whether it's something gigantic and momentous. The job of the writer is to make it matter. It's a great question, but thank you. Yes?
Is what's going on now in politics, is that influencing your writing, or are you trying to write complete escapism to?
I don't think there really is such a thing. But no, I mean, what's going on now is an extreme extension of what's been going on for hundreds of years. So a lot of us, we've been doing this work, and we're going to continue to do the work. And it is extreme right now. But I've been working in my both organizing work and my literary work to destroy white supremacy and patriarchy. That's the job, right? That's been the goal for a long time, and tell a good story on the way, for sure. So now it's heightened, for sure, and there's strategic conversations we need to have, but it's not like everything was hunky-dory and then suddenly it's like shit, It's like everything was like shit, and now it's like fuck, shit, fuck. So, we have strategic conversations again to be had, but I wouldn't say it's changed the work. I mean, if anything, it's sort of brought, I think, a lot of people to realize that the conversations we've been having are now even more relevant. So, the book coming out in September, the sequel to Shadow Shaper, Shadow Has Fall, is very explicitly, a protest book, and it was written long before the election happened. It was written while I was marching through the streets for the Black Lives Matter movement, which was way, before Trump. So, but that conversation is, if anything, even more relevant now. So these conversations are sort of cyclical, and that's the danger of them, is that we kind of get fatigued and everything. But the work is to keep moving forward. This is to answer the question. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Yes.
I'm a big fan of your nonfiction work.
Thank you.
And from reading you in multiple
Mm-hmm.
ages and fiction and nonfiction, I always get the sense that you're being really strategic about which venues you're using in which ways. But for me, A, I'm way off base, and B, either way, to talk about that.
You mean which publications?
No, I mean what can you do in nonfiction that you can't do in fiction? What can you do in YA that you can't do in adult?
Sure. Oh, okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, there is strategy, and there's a lot of instinct to it, I'd say, also. The kind of simplest way to put it is that fiction is my first language, but there are still moments when nonfiction, there's just some thoughts and ideas that have to come out as an essay or a tweet thread or what have you, or just me talking trash at an event. And that's just what it is. And that's sort of how I process the world, is that it's mostly through story, but sometimes through analysis. And sometimes it's just because something really is irking me in a way that I can't put into a narrative, and I need to just get it out into theory. And sometimes, I don't know, it's sort of just how things come to me. But there are things that I've strategically needed to say. With the whole Lovecraft situation, that was not something I could approach through fiction necessarily. I mean, I think there's ways of approaching that. I love that, Victor LaValle and a lot of folks at Tor.com have been putting out these amazing counter-narratives of Lovecraft, so I think that's one really important approach. And I think also doing the literary activism is another one. And this particular thing really just hit me in a way where I just needed to say, fuck this guy. and let's move forward from it. In part because it's such a nuanced conversation too. Like I joke and say, fuck this guy, but really, there's ways of valuing the things that he left behind in his legacy and still calling him for what he is, which is a trash racist motherfucker. You know, and that's fine. Like we can do both, as it turns out. Because a lot of the critique is like, oh, you just want to discard everybody and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, yeah, we want to discard the shitty parts and talk about them. And you know, and still, I've read Lovecraft plenty. Like I studied the motherfucker. My first essay online basically was a whole long ass thing about him. So it's certain things that have a certain kind of nuance that I really want to get at. Just say it outright. This is what it is. This is what I'm feeling. This is the complexity of it. Boom. And then other stuff really just comes through a story. It's a great question. Thank you. Someone else over here. Yes. Hi, son.
Hi.
What's up?
One thing I love about your books is how much attention you gave to place. And I feel like New York is a character in all of your books. I guess my question, and also I feel like the voices of the young people are so real and vibrant. When I read it, I like hear this person, I can see them, I can smell them almost.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you plan on like writing from other locations, like writing about other places, or young people in other cities, that kind of thing?
Oh.
And I know you used to like work with youth and do all that, so like,
Yeah.
it feels like you write from what you know.
Right.
But I'm curious to know if you will ever write about Seattle.
Right. I might. Nobody is safe. Yeah, that's a great question. The next series that I'm writing actually takes place in New York during the 1860s. But there's dinosaurs. That's actually a secret, which I keep telling people. Sorry. I know. I told the Clarion and West people, and then I was like, don't tell anybody. And then I stood in front of a huge room full of people and told them all. It's my fucking secret to tell. Anyway, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But so, still New York, and I there's dinosaurs, so I feel like I can get away with having some modern slang in there too, because there weren't really dinosaurs. People might call each other bra. But to sort of go back to what you said earlier, I do think like listening is a very lost art for writing, and we don't talk enough about how important that is as a skill. We talk about craft, and we talk about story structure, and I did a world building lecture today in class, and those are crucial elements. But to truly be able to listen to another person and to the city itself, I think is like, that's the most important thing that we can do as writers. If we can't listen, we're not, we're just going to be writing diary entries basically all the time, whether we know it or not, We might be writing a diary entry that stars someone totally different than us, but we're still writing a diary entry. And so I think it really is upon us to just take that seriously and really like shut the fuck up for 2 seconds and listen and breathe. Particularly, we need to listen to women and to people who are men, because especially cis men, are just taught not to do that. Like that's not a skill that is ever that patriarchy lets us know matters, right? Which means we really, particularly, have to be intentional and specific about doing it and learning what that means to really listen in a deep way, and not just in a way where we're trying to figure out how to argue back. Right? So that's been a part of my process that I've tried to cultivate, and I would like to think that's why the city sings the way that it does in my books. And then last I'll say, I do want it to be like a character, and I also think it's important to think of the city in terms of conflict, because the city is always in crisis, right? Particularly the American city. Like, we're looking at a constant state of crisis, and crisis again is what makes stories stories, right? So if we understand the ongoing crisis in the context of the story, I think that allows us to then have a deep conversation about the conflict for the characters and how it's relating to the conflict of the world that they inhabit. And that's when things, I think, get really exciting as far as literature goes. Thank you for your question. Yes? No? Somebody? People are pointing at each other. Go ahead.
Well, it seems like we moved on from the topic, but it was brought up the kind of fatigue that happens when you're engaging with some of the really shitty stuff that happens. And I was wondering if you could talk about how you continue your work as an artist while dealing with that.
Yeah. So the question is about fatigue. Just, I think that's particularly important in this day and age, and just how to function as an artist. Self-care is so important. And that's, along with listening, I think, an under-discussed aspect of just being alive, and particularly being alive as an artist. You know, as Erykah Badu said, we are sensitive about our shit. And that sort of extends to the wider world, right? If you're sensitive about your shit, and your shit is talking about the world around you, then you're sensitive, period. And that's good, you should be, because that's what makes artists great, is that, you know, we're listening and we're paying attention. But that also requires us to know who we are and where we're at, and so that we can know when to step back. It's back to the self-reflection question, you know. We do nobody any good if we just push and grind ourselves into the ground and then burn out and then are horrible people to be around and then are dead. It's just not helpful. We're not changing the world. We're not saving the world. We're just, you know, making ourselves into corpses. And that's the opposite of what needs to happen, you know. So mainly I would say I would encourage everyone, and I always say this is part of my own process, is to actively shed shame from your process in every possible way. Shame is really what holds you back more than anything else. Shame is what holds you back much more so than, for instance, missing a single day of writing, which does not turn you into an automatically non-writer. The second that it happens at the 24-hour mark, you don't just magically not become a non-writer. But shame will make you stop writing, and the feeling that you should have written yesterday, and so you're not really worthwhile, or you don't deserve to write today because you didn't write yesterday. That will stop you from being a writer, because you will start to hate the blank page. And more than anything, we need to love the blank page, because the blank page is also our source of survival. For those of us who are writers, that's how we make it through, is by processing the world and turning it into story or into song. So if we then allow shame to create an adversarial relationship with the one thread that we have that will pull us out of this mire, that's how self-destruction happens. So it's hard, because we're taught to hate ourselves, you know, again and again, particularly writers, you know, who are marginalized on one level or another. There's always the sense that we don't deserve to be there, or we should be grateful just to be at the table at all, or, you know, we just have to take whatever scraps are given to us. And that's not true, but we believe it, you know. They tell you a lie. Shame is the lie that someone else told you about yourself. As the great writer Anais Nin said. And that's the truth. And so I think the process of self-care really is a process of finding and uprooting and destroying shame inside of you as much as possible, which means allowing yourself to take breaks, like the Hamilton song says. Yes?
I'm curious if your advice on artists and activists who are inspiring you right now.
Oh man, there's so many. Nisha Shaw is right. Everfair, her books I'm writing to others, she's amazing. Cherie Renee Thomas, who was my mentor, like from jump, from back in the day. Incredible writer and person and editor. Tanana Reeve is also doing amazing work. There's just so many people doing great. This is a really exciting time to be a writer, because there is so much happening right now, both in the realm of young adult fiction and the realm of fantasy and science fiction. In the adult world, there is so much happening. There's so much good work being made, and it's not just that it's diverse, whatever that means. It's that it's badass, and it's talking about the world the way that it really is, and it's telling these stories from the different rhythms and truths that we know, and that we survive through and that we live through every day. When I set out to write Shadow Shaper in 2009, you couldn't find a book critiquing white supremacy in the fantasy realm besides the very, very few that were out there that we read over and over, like Octavia Butler's books, to remind ourselves that it was possible to tell an amazing story and launch a deep and penetrating critique of the powers that hold us down at the same time. That level of multitasking was just found so few and far between for so long, and it's so exciting that now there's this renaissance of writers just coming up and being badass, being ridiculous, and not taking any kind of shit and telling our stories. Like, that's what's happening right now, and it, you know, if we're not careful, of course it can become a flash in the pan, but what I see is the sustainability work happening around it, and people really digging in to tell these stories for a long time, and that's why it's great to be a writer today. So I'm going to end on that note, since I'm listening. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are great. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to sign the books. Please take out a picture of you today. And thank you once again. Also, I'm gonna have a mailing list out. If someone could lend me a piece of paper that I could write a mailing list on. So put your email down if you want information about what I'm up to.